consultation and estimate. Call them at 404-365-8339. That's 404-365-8339.
Welcome to Ask the Experts radio show with Atlanta's top experts in legal, health, financial, and home improvement. So sit back for the next 30 minutes with our experts in tax relief, family law, estate planning, plumbing repair, personal injury law, and wealth management. If you have any questions for our experts, please call in at 404-603-8770. And now, here's your host, Steve Sanger.
And we are back. We're back for our second half hour of our show. What a great next half hour it's going to be, because there are so many people out there that don't know about buying or selling of a business. And we were so lucky to get one of the top business brokers, not only in just the Atlanta and Georgia area, but actually in the whole entire United States. We have the Sunbelt Business Brokers with us today, and we have the CEO Managing Director, Doreen Morgan. Good morning, Doreen.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
Well, besides just getting over COVID, and I got to tell you, when they tell you, when you find out you're finally negative, you still are sick from it. And they say this variance isn't bad, but it's not good. But thank God I'm doing better. And we've got so much to go over today, Doreen. Before we start, though, tell people about your company and your background.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that you had COVID. I'm hope you get over that soon. I'm glad you had a negative result. Sunbelt Atlanta is a business brokerage firm here in Atlanta that started in 1998, and we sell Main Street and lower middle market companies. So a Main Street company is kind of defined as anything you would see on Main Street: hardware stores, retail, hair salons, that type of thing. And generally, we do a lot of business service companies and professional firms and things like that. So it's kind of anything under $1 million in earnings. And then lower middle market tends to be things that are going to be over $1 million, over $1.5 million in earnings, and typically over $5 million in revenue. About 50% of our practice is Main Street, and the other 50% is lower middle market. Okay. I've represented sell side my entire career, 18 years, and most of that time has been on Main Street with some investment banking. I spent 3 years with a large investment banking firm. And when the founder here was ready to sell 7 years ago, I came back in. He was my mentor, and I came back in and bought him out. So we really kind of focus on 9 industry verticals. We focus on medical, technology. I'm very excited about this, but I have a restaurant expert that will be joining us in a few weeks. So we will be
that's wonderful.
Representing the restaurant sector. Yes, I'm very happy about that. Again, we do a lot of business services, transportation, manufacturing, distribution are the main verticals that we cover at this point.
What's the hottest business right now that you're selling?
It's a little all over the board, because businesses are so varied. They're as varied as the people are out there. Right now, I think the industry that's generating the most interest is anything related to infrastructure. Okay. So underground utilities, road construction, paving, drilling. We're doing a lot in that space. And then also fabrication, manufacturing. We do a lot there. infrastructure in the Atlanta market is huge right now. Concrete, things like that, and it's because there's just a tremendous amount of work to be done in that space, and it's an industry that is seeing, like so many other industries, a lot of baby boomers exiting out. So, and then of course, business services, manufacturing is always a big one. And then on the Main Street side of things, anything pet related is huge. Restaurants, people love restaurants. It's a great industry to be in. And healthcare is always a big industry as well.
So a lot of people have probably set their New Year's goal of buying a business, but there's a lot of people who've never done that before. So how should one go about finding the right business for them?
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of people looking for businesses now. I think more than I've ever seen, and a lot of that is driven by just low interest rates, the economy. A lot of people were pushed into out of work through the pandemic, and a lot of people don't want to go back to a 9-to-5, and they want to own their own destiny. So to find the right business. It's most sellers, it's the first time they've ever sold a business. Most of the time, it's the first time someone is buying a business. And to find the right business, you really need to reach out to as many brokerage firms as you can in the area where you want to buy a business. Every brokerage firm has a distribution list that they will add buyers to, because most of the time, there are very few firms that represent buyers directly. Usually it's brokerage firm, they take companies to market. We're intermediaries, so we help facilitate the transaction and make sure it runs as smoothly as possible. But most firms represent the seller. So it's great to reach out to as many firms as you can and get on their distribution list. And it's really great if you know what you're looking for or have an idea to put together and be as specific as possible about the type of company that you're looking for, the type of business that you want. You'll need to provide the firm when you find a business that you're interested in. You'll sign an NDA, and you'll need to provide, a very high level view of your net worth and your financial statements. And it's good to have a resume, and it's better to be on LinkedIn and have LinkedIn profile, really. If you don't know what kind of business that you're interested in, geography is helpful.
Yes.
And then once you're on that distribution list, most firms, anytime they take a business to market, they're sending out, a one-page overview of what the company is, and that'll come straight to you. If it's not something you're interested in, just delete it. If you are interested, reach out and contact the broker that's got that.
We're talking with Doreen Morgan right now. She is the CEO and Managing Director for Sunbelt Business Brokers. Do you just handle the Atlanta area or all of Georgia?
It depends. Mostly all of the Atlanta metro area. We do get calls from outside of metro Atlanta, so we can represent all of Georgia and the Southeast. In a lot of cases, depending on the business.
So let's talk about price range. How does a buyer determine how much they can afford to spend on a business?
Typically, a buyer is going to need to have between 10 and 20% down. 10% down if it's a company with heavy assets, trucks, manufacturing equipment, things like that. If it's a services industry business like a professional services company, landscaping, design, CPA, law firms, things like that, 20% down would be required because they're very light on assets. It's just, desks and chairs for the most part. Most businesses, as long as the company has good books and records, then, most businesses can be funded and backed by the SBA. And that's the SBA requirement is between 10 and 15% down. And then above that, you need to have good credit, at least a credit score of 680. 680 is kind of the threshold for the SBA. And then, with the SBA guarantee, that's all you really need to have. You don't have to have a high net worth. You do have to have transferable industry experience. So transferable industry experience means management experience, P&L responsibility that can transfer across into the business you're interested in, and direct industry experience is even better. But that's it, between 10 and 20% down. And depending on the type of business it is, SBA will guarantee loans up to $5 million, and if there's real estate involved, they can go to $7 million.
Wow. Okay. So you represent a lot of sellers. Why do people want to sell their business?
People typically want to sell their business because they are ready to retire. More and more, we're seeing younger sellers, and it's because entrepreneurship has become more and more common, and so we're seeing more serial entrepreneurs that are ready to sell, and they're in their 40s or early 50s, and a lot of times they've built a business and they're just ready to go and do something else. The vast majority of the companies that we represent are founder-owned, so typically it's for retirement reasons. With franchise concepts, they tend to sell. People don't hold on to them for 25 and 30 years. They usually have a cycle of like 7 to 10 years before an owner is ready to sell, and a lot of times it's just so they can go do something else, or oftentimes with the franchise industry, because you're in business for yourself, but you're not in business by yourself, those are great businesses for people coming out of corporate America. So a lot of times people coming out of corporate America that want to own a business will buy a franchise. They've gotten the kids out of the house, they're away at college, and they feel secure enough to leave corporate America and go into their own business. So with franchise concepts, a lot of times that is the encore business. That is the second career. So they're coming into the franchise industry late 40s, early 50s, or even late 50s, and so that's what they'll do until they're ready to retire. So franchise concepts do tend to sell between 5 and 7 years, and then founder-owned businesses, come to market, usually for retirement reasons as well.
Is it hard to get a seller to stay on for a while to help the new buyer of a company? Is it hard for them to get them just to oversee for a short period of time? No, typically it is not, because sellers, usually their number one goal is to make sure that their legacy continues. No one wants to sell their business and see it fail. And so sellers are typically, very interested in staying on and transitioning the business and making sure that the new owner is successful.
They've got their loyalty and connections with their employees and their customers, and they want to make sure they're taken care of. And depending on the industry and depending on the complexity of the business, transition time can be anywhere typically from 6 weeks to a year. And we see a lot of times a founder may have grown the company to a point where, it's starting to outgrow them and they aren't really ready to retire completely, but they want help getting the company to the next level. And so oftentimes they'll sell to a strategic buyer or private equity firm, and, use somebody else's money and deeper level of experience growing larger companies to help them get the company to the next level. And they can stay on for 3 to 5 years and then exit out completely at that time. So it's really pretty varied, but it's sellers do have a vested interest, usually in making sure employees transition and customers transition well.
You know what? What's so great about having Sunbelt Business Brokers as one of our experts is it's so obvious you love what you're doing.
Oh yeah, it's just great. No 2 days are the same, and I get to meet, entrepreneurs from all different, walks of life and all different industries, and listen to, how they built their company. And when we take a company to market, they're really putting a lot of times their life's work in our hands, and we're helping them realize their retirement. And then at the same time, a lot of times we're helping buyers realize a dream that they've had for a long time to own a business. So it's really rewarding.
Doreen, there's a lot of work you have to do to prepare a business to be sold, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. We love to be in front of sellers, even 2 or 3 years before they're ready to sell, so that, we can give them an opinion of value and maybe some things that may make the business more valuable. A lot of times, though, we'll, meet with the seller and be on the market 3 weeks later, 8 weeks later, if it's a Main Street level business. And as long as the seller has their books and records in order, that's the number one thing that a seller can do is have good books and records. And for a buyer, that is one of the first things they want to understand too. Is how does the seller manage the financial side of the business? And it doesn't have to be big company level financials. It's just got to be the buyer's got to be able to understand what amount of due diligence is going to have to go into understanding the financials in the business.
Dorian, before we go to break, I just want to say, because I had a friend of mine who was selling his business in Dallas, and he thought he was going to save some money by trying to do it himself. And nothing happened until he hired a business broker. And listen, I understand every business is different. You can't say this will sell them. But he said it was the biggest mistake he did by trying to do it himself and not get a business broker like Sunbelt Business Brokers.
Yeah, there is an awful lot that goes into selling your business, and we really help sellers prepare to sell their business. It's very difficult to get fair market value for your business unless you go to the open market. And then, a lot of times we'll hear people say, well, I have a buyer. And, so what do you do then? So now you have a buyer. Now what?
Now what? Right.
Finding the buyer is really about 10% of what goes into what we do. When we take a company to market, we're putting together, a marketing package. We're staging out due diligence. There are certain times when you should release certain information. You don't want to give away customer names or supplier names too early in the due diligence process. And the number one reason you really don't want to go to market for sale by owner, because you can do that, and there are public sites to do that on, but confidentiality is gone at that point, because when the buyers call, they're talking to you as the seller and they know it's your company for sale. So the first step in our process is the buyer has to sign an NDA. It's a non-disclosure agreement, confidentiality agreement, saying they won't disclose that the company is for sale, because that can be damaging. And they have to send us, high-level financial statement and a resume, so that we know that they are actually going to qualify to purchase the business before we ever tell them the name of the company or release any of the information to the prospective buyer. And then we also ensure that, we're getting you full value for your business, because we're putting it out there in front of multiple buyers. We spend a lot of time putting together, target buyer lists of companies that could be strategic or synergistic and would benefit the most from owning a business like yours. But we also secure financing. Like oftentimes when we take a business to market, the day we get all the marketing material done, we're sending that package to banks in the area that we know will lend on that type of business. And oftentimes, by the time we get to the first buyer meeting, we have a bank that likes the transaction and has issued a term sheet to underwrite the loan. So, when buyers come in and they want to negotiate the price down, there's really no reason for the seller to have to negotiate the price down, because we've already arranged financing for the full purchase price.
Well, I got to tell you that because we get a lot of text in during the show, you're having a great show when we've gotten 4 texts already telling us what a great show this is. And what's so great about it is we have so many business owners that listen to our show. We normally would go to break at about quarter till, but we're running a little behind, and I got so many more questions for you. First of all, let's give everybody your phone number.
Okay, it is 770-936-9099. And we're, right here in Atlanta. Our office is in the Georgetown on the Perimeter area, one exit from Perimeter Mall.
And what about your website?
It is Sunbelt Atlanta. Atlanta is spelled out .com.
I see this this ad. It says sold cash free, debt free. What does that mean?
Yeah, sold cash free, debt free means that the buyer coming in, will start fresh with a zero balance sheet. So the seller keeps all of the cash in the business and all of the receivables and all of the money owed on payables up until the closing date. And so the buyer comes in fresh, and banks take that into account. So the seller owns everything up until the closing date, and the buyer owns everything from that point forward, including all the liabilities and all the new business. And banks will take that into account. We will, on a Main Street on a Main Street size business, banks take that into account, and we determine, how much operating capital the buyer is going to need to, get through those first couple of weeks or that first month, or whatever that sales cycle typically is. And operating capital is rolled into the loan.
You know what? I was just thinking, I try to think about questions of people who are in their cars right now who are listening to the show. It must be so hard when, your business sometimes is like your child, your baby, and you think it's worth a lot more than it really is. How do you deal with that when the seller thinks their business is worth a lot more than it really is?
Those are hard conversations to have, but it's less and less that we're having those conversations because there's just more information available out there. But the way that we value a business is it really comes down to for 90% of the companies out there, it's going to be a multiple of sellers' discretionary earnings. And to define sellers' discretionary earnings, that is what the seller actually realizes through the business, what drops to the bottom line. So the officer, the owner salary is added back into that calculation to get to that seller's discretionary income line, because the new owner is going to come in and have that salary for themselves or to use in a discretionary manner that they choose. Things like personal vehicles and things that aren't that benefit the seller that somebody else could consider discretionary. I already have a car and it's paid off. Those kinds of things, health care, the things that will benefit the new buyer. And then the multiple of that seller's discretionary earnings varies, and it can vary significantly between industries. And then, multiples vary based on the size of the company as well. The larger the company, the larger the multiple is going to be. But that is the first thing that we do when we sit down with a seller. That's usually the first meeting. Oftentimes we'll get the information to do an opinion of value before we even meet, so that when we sit down, we've done our industry research, we know what businesses in that industry are selling for. We have an understanding of, who the strategic buyers are out there that are making the acquisitions and what they're paying for them. And so when we sit down with a seller, we can really show them, what their business is worth and, how we arrived at that and why it's worth that. But it really comes down to... I got to tell you,
we've run out of time. This show went by so fast. We've actually had a couple of people just text us wanting to know when you're going to be on again. Doreen is with us the last Wednesday of each month at 9:30, so it's really easy to remember. I think this is the most text we've gotten, people enjoying the show, and it's been so easy and it's gone by so fast. Let's give everybody your phone number again.
Okay, it is 770-936-9099. And if people had questions in the text and they want to forward those on, they can, let's see. Let me give you extension 801. That's Julia Mentor. She's our office manager. And they can contact her, and she can give them an email address, because I know people are driving. It's difficult to write that down. And we're happy to answer questions that people have and respond. I'm glad to help.
Hey, the show goes by so fast. You'll be back with us again next month, the last Wednesday of the month at 9:30. And thank you so much, Doreen. Love the show today, and We'll see you again next month.
Thank you, Steve. I enjoy being here. Thank you very much.
We're lucky to have you. That was Doreen Morgan. She is the CEO Managing Director at Sunbelt Business Brokers. We're going to be back with you again next week. We've got our estate planning show, and we got so many great experts. Everybody have a wonderful week. Stay healthy, please. Thank you so much. Thanks, Miles, for putting together such a great show. We'll see you next week.
At Sunbelt Atlanta, their team is made up of seasoned professionals with more than 70 years of collective experience selling companies. Their backgrounds and industry experience are as varied as the companies they represent. Some come from Main Street, some from Wall Street. Now, collectively, Sunbelt Atlanta business brokers have closed hundreds of transactions, and the companies they have sold range in size from $100,000 to $50 million in revenue and spanned all industries. Doreen Morgan owns Sunbelt Atlanta, and she is one of the leading merger and acquisition advisors in the United States, specializing in franchise and specialty distribution business models. For more than 15 years, Doreen has advised franchisors, multi-unit franchisees, and owners of proprietary and patented products on short and long-term portfolio exit strategies and corporate divestitures. Sunbelt has helped hundreds of business owners in Georgia get the most value from the sale of their business. Sunbelt Atlanta business brokers are a full-service company when it comes time to sell or buy a business with zero upfront fees. So discover the Sunbelt Atlanta difference and contact them today at 770-936-9099. Once again, that's 770-936-9099. Or you can visit them on the web at sunbeltatlanta.com. You have been listening to the Ask the Experts radio show with your host, Steve Sanger. You can join Steve and his experts every Wednesday at 9 a.m. for more Ask the Experts. If you would like to find out how your company can become an expert, you can give Steve O a call at 888-574-6999. That's 888-574-6999. And remember, we will be back with more Ask the Experts next Wednesday, right here on The Real 1100.